President BCCNI Advisory Leader PwC India. I would request Mr. Basu to stay back on the dais. And we'll take just a couple of minutes to change over, and in between we can have a look at the infrastructure of the IT infrastructure in Kolkata. May we have the video please, by Infinity.
Of Eastern India's human capital is home to more than 900 companies, with more than 100,000 professionals employed directly. This is where Infinity Group has acted as the harbinger of IT revolution over the past decades, with numerous green buildings that total over 5 million square feet of green infrastructure scattered within an area of 3 kilometers. A home of smart thinkers is a marvel called the Infinity Think Tank, which was one of the very first intelligent IT-empowered workspace in Sector 5 that revolutionized the landscape of the area and ushered in an era that raised the benchmark of infrastructure and brought in smart integrated business parks all around. A slew of cutting-edge smart green buildings with a futuristic design and robust engineering followed, such as Infinity Benchmark, Godrej Waterside, Infinity IT Lagoon, Martin Byrne Business Park, Merlin Infinite, and Advent's Infinity. Infinity Business Center is housed in the award-winning Benchmark and Godrej Waterside building, having state-of-the-art co-working spaces at the heart of Sector 5. Fully furnished plug-and-play model, which is scalable at any point of time. Infinity Business Center will offer every single modern amenity and convenience needed.
So let us get back to the session.
$1 billion deal.
Thank you, Gaurav and Arnav, for joining us. I would request Arnav please take the session forward. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Gaurav. Ladies and gentlemen, my pleasure to present to you Gaurav. Gaurav, of course, has founded Bluestone. No, I was not looking for that. Gaurav has founded Bluestone, but I think it's quite a journey which Gaurav has had from passing out of computer science engineering in IIT Delhi. Then he has dabbled a bit with some other startups like Chakpak, and then landed on Bluestone as an idea which he has founded and obviously has taken in places. I have been strictly instructed not to talk about its valuation, so I will not do that. And it's been a journey where we as PwC, we have had some, part to play in the journey to be connected to Gaurav. But Gaurav, maybe to start with, if you can talk a bit about the journey, your early dabblings in other startups, and then how did you land up with this idea, and how does this fit into your passion? Maybe a bit of that.
So good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am Gaurav, founder and CEO of Bluestone. We are India's leading omnichannel jewelry company. So I was born in Rajasthan, in Kota, which is a city now very famous for producing a lot of engineers and a lot of doctors. I was born and brought up, not moved there just to study. So in 96, 97, I did coaching in Kota. In fact, 2 years before that, I was not even aware what IIT was. I was just happily studying in school with no idea about what the career is, etc. But I think the blueprints of the coaching industry started shaping up in Kota in 96, 97, and the pioneers were Mr. V.K. Bansal and Pramod Maheshwari. So I also did coaching, and at that time I came to know what IIT was, prepared for it, and cleared the entrance exam. and joined IIT Delhi in the computer science branch. And no prior experience with computers, etc. I never operated one, but learned, I think, thanks to that institute and the curriculum, we all grew. And then around 2002, the year 2000 and 2001, when we were graduating, was a very, those were special years. That was the dot-com era, if many of you remember. Y2K used to be very famous. Everyone was about everything, the whole world will come crashing down. There were movies also where the world did come crashing down. The Y2K around, the movies around Y2K. And that was the year when US markets were booming like nothing anyone had ever seen before. And I remember in my batch, there was the topper of our batch. He was all India rank 11 also. Very smart chap. He had 15 offers in hand. 8 of them in US, 2 in France, 1 in Spain, 3 in India, and so on. By the time we graduated, all the offers were dropped, all the offers were revoked. Such was the crash. Right? So a lot of our batchmates eventually ended up with no jobs in hand, having received a lot of offers before that. And truly, that was the first cycle that we had all seen. As a result of that, what I had seen, what I had observed was a lot of us, a lot of our contemporaries actually dabbled into a lot of startups. 8 of my batchmates, they actually started a company right out of IIT. It was called Critical, worked out very well. Many of my batchmates are entrepreneurs. So Gaurav Agrawal, who is the founder of 1MG, Pankaj Vermani, who is founder of Clovia, Prashant Tandon, again founder of HealthCart, and lots of folks. So, and all that had happened eventually, but I think some sort of dabbling into startup ecosystem and that you could actually start companies happened at that time. Now, after graduation, my first company that I joined was Tavan Technologies, which was Bangalore based. It was founded by Ashish Gupta of Helion Ventures, and he was founder of Jungly also, which was sold to Amazon back in '97. So that I joined, that was a services company. In fact, I think 90-95% of the jobs in India at that time were services jobs, where the clients were offshore or onshore. I don't know what is offshore, what is onshore, but clients are outside. And most of the people here would get like a requirement doc and they would work on that. So I think what was happening at that time was the core skill set of engineering, the core skill set of programming, etc., was getting built in the country. Now around 2002-2003, a lot of these successful US startups, which were now big companies like Yahoo, Google, Amazon, etc., these had started setting up their offices in India. And what they did was they went beyond services and they actually gathered teams to then work on products directly for US market. So a lot of folks who were working in these companies got exposed to many of these products. They saw how some of these products that they created, let's say in a week or 2 weeks time, let's say product review suddenly was used by some 20 million users. They saw the monetary value of it. They saw the relevance of a lot of the code that they were writing. I think in services what was not happening was that they were writing the code, they were writing it to the specification, but they were not kind of exposed to the impact of it. I think in these companies, we also started seeing the impact. So from Tavan, so I was in Tavan, I then went to US for almost a year, wanted to come back. So US is a nice place, but nothing like home. So I just wanted to come back. And Amazon was opening their office in India in 2004. So I joined Amazon, and those 2 years I think were transformational. I was among the first 5 employees in Amazon India. We grew to around 80-100 people, and I think 2 years after that, almost half of that office left and started their own companies. And this was when startup scene was almost non-existent. I think there was one wave of BPOs and services companies that were started long back and that were doing phenomenally well. But product startups, actually creating websites, creating apps were not even around at that time. But it was primarily website for this purpose, for that purpose, or for some other purpose. Creating a website to be consumed or to be used by others was not something that was heard of till that time. So, and Amazon, Yahoo, Google, all these were primarily web-based companies. So a lot of startups that spawned out of it were all that. So I was among the first ones to quit also. The first one to join, first one to quit. A lot of startups, and I'll name few. Flipkart got started after that, right? Sachin and Vinny, they quit almost 6 months after me. The guy who runs Traction, Abhishek Goyal, very nice friend, he was also in Amazon. Infibeam literally got started out of, I think 3 out of 4 members of the founding team were from this office, Just Pay, which is also, I think it's a unicorn, but phenomenal guys. That was also started from the same cohort of 1,500 folks, and these are all the names that are successful right now that we have heard of right now. There were many more. Zopna was started by my manager, again did very well and so I think that seed of startup, that seed of entrepreneurship was being seeded at that time, and it was emerging out of companies like Amazon, Yahoo, and Google. And those were very different times. So we went to VCs to raise money and so on, and we realized there's just a handful of VCs, and less than 12. All of them, I think, all the Bombay VCs had their office in Trident Hotel in Nariman Point. So whenever we would go there, I was just literally kind of camped there in Trident Hotel. We got our initial seed check from Excel Partners and Canon Partners. That was back in 2007, 2008. Funding rounds used to be much smaller. 2.5, 3 million was a very big amount at that time. Just keep it. So seed rounds, etc. used to be much smaller. I remember fellow entrepreneurs, Mintra was being funded by Excel at that time. Flipkart was being funded by Excel at that time. So it was a very small group of people. It was like, I would say 15, 20 people, a very small cohort. Everyone would speak to each other. Everyone would talk to each other about what's working for them, what's not working for them. Another dear friend, he was working in Trilogy in Bangalore. He was from Jaipur, he had to move because of some personal emergency, and he started a company called carddeco.com in Jaipur, and we all know him right now, Amit Jain, who is in the Shark Tank. So he was my flatmate. So I think there was a very small cohort of people, and we were just all exchanging ideas. Something worked for us in Chakpak. Chakpak was a social network that they started in 2007 after quitting Amazon. Something worked in Chakpak. We would very quickly tell that to Amit or to Sachin in Flipkart, and would start working for others also, and vice versa. So a lot of that thing is happening, and then around 2009, 2010, I think, was when the real money started getting pumped in. Tiger Global came and then started funding almost all e-commerce companies. A lot of companies got funded in that e-commerce wave, and so that was the time when we were running Chakpak, and it was in the social networking space and the content space. And one of the big realization for us was that while the product was beautiful, while we had a very strong traction, etc., ad revenues in India were going to take a long time to pick up. And we've seen the examples of that, right? We've seen in Mobi having been in the business for a very, very long time. And we've also seen how Google and Facebook over time have actually taken lion's share of ad revenues and so on. So content game at that time was struggling. And I was not very sure that the situation, the macros were going to change very soon. So there were certain parts of the business that Flipkart was interested in. So we sold it to that. I moved out of it and then thought of what to start next. And e-commerce was kind of very clear to me, having seen the numbers and the success of Flipkart, Myntra, etc. And having worked in Amazon, how when it actually takes off, it takes off very, very beautifully. I think one of the biggest things in my mind at that time was which category to start in. Flipkart, Amazon were already there. They were operating in 2 or 3 categories, but I think the major thing that was in my mind was the category had to have some natural defenses. Otherwise, what happens is when Amazon, Flipkart, or any other horizontal decides to enter that category, you don't find any moats. You find it very difficult to struggle against the scale and the capital of those bigger horizontals. So and hence, I think that was the biggest criteria. That was the biggest question in my mind. I looked around, I saw few categories where there was significant differentiation. In my opinion, at that time, there were three major categories. One was grocery. The supply chain is so differentiated that's not very easy for a horizontal to just put a tab or a new page on their website and they're suddenly number one. That doesn't happen in that case. Furniture and then jewelry. I was not married at that time, so I had never stepped inside a jewelry store. I had no idea about what jewelry is. I used to think that white gold and platinum are same, which I later came to know. So that was how naive I was about the category. But when I looked around, I realized that it's a very big category. It's a very anomalous category in India. For almost every other category, you look at the US market, and if the US market is X billion dollar, Indian market would typically be 1/10 of that. This was a category where Indian market was bigger than US market. Right? Indians' passion for jewelry is at a different level altogether, and it has roots in our culture. The occasions, the value, the significance of jewelry is much higher in our culture than in any other culture. In fact, for the longest time, diamonds were only mined in India, till around 200 years back, when a few other mines were found. And we all know the history of jewelry from India, the rich history of ruby, emerald, and all those pieces which are actually taken out of India and so on. So jewelry was special in India. I had absolutely no clue why people buy, what people buy, etc. I had no clue about the category. But Excel, who was the backer in my first company also, they were also very interested in the category. So they said, if you want to do it, give it a shot. We will give you a seed check. So we started with a seed check of around 4 million from Excel. And learned on the job essentially. All these 10 years we learned about the category, how it operates and so on. And built the company over the last 11 years on first principles, totally first principles. So what I fundamentally believe is experience has certain advantages and experience has certain disadvantages. Experience allows you to kind of make much lesser mistakes, but experience also sets a certain plasticity in your mind and which stops you from actually trying out new ideas. So the way we did, some of the things that we did and then realized those were wrong, and when industry folks would tell us, they'll say it was obviously wrong, we all knew that this is not how it's done. But then there were so many things that we did which they did not realize would work out so wonderfully. So I can talk a lot more depth about that if there's an interest.
So Gaurav, I think, fascinating story around, how probably the broader macroeconomics pushed you towards it. You touched upon the fact that, how having friends who were all doing it helped, in shaping your thoughts, exchanging ideas, learning from each other and all of that. Coming to, the category which you chose around jewelry, you chose to go online first, right? And then, while we are all going mad about omni-channel, you moved from online to offline. Tell us about that journey, about why, you chose that and, what prompted you to go from that and, why couldn't you have thought of it the other way and, what went into your mind?
So internet was our starting point, and the core belief was that at that time, and the belief has changed over time, it has evolved. I have evolved over the last 10 years, the belief and the thought process has also evolved. So the thought at that time was just pure simple e-commerce, that everything is being bought online. And let's say if I take a 50-year view, even jewelry or any category, big, small, there will be a significant chunk of that transaction happening, which would happen online. And I still hold on to that point of view. I just believe that the journey requires a lot more expertise in offline, and I'll just walk you through all that. So the whole idea was that online would take up a good share, around, let's say, at least 10 to 20% of overall jewelry will get sold online. So on that premise, we built it. We started building it. One of the first hypotheses that we had was this is not a marketplace category. This is not a category where I just provide a service layer and then ask anyone and everyone to start selling, uploading their designs and start selling it. I think this category requires a lot of trust, a lot of comfort, etc. And that only a product brand, or when you have very strong control in everything, you can provide. And that is the reason why Flipkart, Amazon, and everyone has struggled with that. Right? So on those platforms, selling or buying, let's say, a very standardized item like a phone, etc., or buying a very cheap item, which is a non-standardized, is okay, but something like jewelry has never worked for them. So, and the hypothesis, and hence, even in offline world, if you see, the jewelry brand is the jewelry retailer, right? It's not a multi-brand MBO of jewelry where all the jewelers are selling. So with the same hypothesis we started, and then we had set up our own design teams to start creating designs. And one of the first roadblock that we hit was with the product photography. So when we tried photographing those pieces, those small jewelry pieces, and we had to photograph them at 10x scale because they're so small that when you're presenting it, it has to be significantly zoomed out. Three problems. Jewelry has gold and diamonds, so it either reflects the light or it lets the light pass through. How do you photograph such a thing? It's like, how do you photograph a mirror? You can't photograph it. It will be you in that photograph. So And then when you actually zoom it to 10x, 20x, even the minor scratch or minor aberration on the surface would become very, very apparent. So photography was just not doing it. So what we did was, we looked around, but everyone was using those same bad photographs. And my hypothesis was that if someone is going to buy it online, not hypothesis, belief, that if someone was going to buy online, they're actually going to buy the image or the digital content, right? What they're going to get is the physical product, but all the selling needs to be done by these digital assets. So these digital assets, presentation has to be absolutely beautiful. So that was the time when we started exploring 3D rendering technology. A lot of this technology is being used in movies also. If you see Marvel movies, etc., they all use 3D. Right? It's not that it was real photography. So we started doing something similar for jewelry, and then the product started looking so beautiful. One of my investors commented that you have done this, but will the actual product match up to this? The kind of beauty that we're showing here. I said, now that is the second step. We have to, that would be our endeavor to make sure that the real product is even more beautiful than this. So with that we started. Another roadblock that we hit was working capital. As we started expanding our product offerings, we realized that we cannot inventorize everything. The value of all the capital, growth capital would go and get locked in the inventory itself. So we got into just-in-time manufacturing. Almost no other player in the industry has 100% captive manufacturing. We are the only ones. So we set up our own factory and we started producing jewelry after the order was placed in 3 to 5 days. And the industry standard at that time was 3 to 5 weeks. And we created our own systems, we wrote our own code, so factory management system, warehouse management system, order management system, website, apps, point of sale, everything is written in-house. And that gives us kind of a seamless flow of all the data from one place to another. So with that, and that's what I meant by first principles, right? We saw a problem and we solved for that problem. Either we were too naive to see how others were doing, or maybe we were too smart to not fall in that trap, because then we would not have succeeded also. And online picked up. Online grew to almost 50-60 crore in revenue in just 4 to 5 years. And then we started noticing a pattern that online growth was tapering. We spoke to a lot of our customers, what's happening or what are you buying, reasons to buy. So the number one reason why people said we bought from you was designs. That we loved the design so much that we had to buy it. It's not trust, it was not anything. If anything, they were very skeptical. If they would even get that piece or not, who's those two, never heard of it, etc., etc. But still, the pull of design was so much that they ordered, and that number was almost 86% of the overall buyers. 9% people said choices, 3% said price, and 1% said convenience. So in our business, we did not have the natural drivers of e-commerce. Price and convenience are the natural drivers for any horizontal e-commerce or e-commerce across all categories. For us, it was design. It was a fact that for the very first time, a woman, a consumer could actually go and browse, look at 2,000 designs of rings. Now you can't do that in the offline world. In offline world, you can actually go browse for almost every other category, but not in jewelry. So I'll just give you an anecdote. So around 30 years back, when my dad were to buy a shirt, he would actually go to a shop to buy a shirt. On that weekend, on that day, he would sit on that counter, ask that person that I want a light color shirt with checks, and that person would pull out 4 shirts or 4 thon. Then he would say, no, checks have to be bigger, smaller, etc. It was an over-the-counter iterative buying process. And that was the fact for almost every other category, be it sarees, be it shoes, any other category. Then came large format stores, and they actually replaced those counters with aisles. And the salesperson moved from front of you to actually behind you as an assistant. And all the merchandise was on both sides of those aisles. So, and that encouraged browsing. That was when actually women, so my wife would actually be in malls, in Zara, in Shoppers Stop, or generally in malls just browsing. So those large format stores actually gave rise to browsing, and then some of that browsing ended up in buying, and resulted in buying something. Now came online, and online made those aisles endless, that you can actually just infinite aisle. And that browsing continues. So it's no longer just weekend browsing. If you're getting bored, you can browse, you can shortlist, you can add product to your cart or your wish list. Before sleeping, while commuting, while having your lunch, while sitting in a conference and getting bored, you can keep adding products to your cart. Right? So that browsing became continuous, and that actually gave rise to a lot of consumerism that we see now. Now go back to jewelry, nothing happened. It is being sold in exactly the same way as was sold 40 years back. And what we observed, the consumer had already moved on. The consumer had moved to browsing. And hence the sheer fact that you could now browse 2,000 designs of rings before making up your mind that this is what I want and this is what I don't want. As opposed to walking into a store. A person asking you, what is your budget? What are you looking for? And you say ring. And that person sits you. And then shows you 2-3 trays and then kind of chides you into selecting this ring or that ring or some other ring. So essentially that process, I don't think anyone likes that process. We are used to it and it's very difficult for us to say that we don't like it or to even quantify it. But in the back, this has already happened. IKEA did it in furniture, which is almost impossible to do. But furniture is one of the most difficult categories where you can give unassisted browsing or not over the counter aisle kind of an experience. So I'm saying, and it reaped wonders for them. So in our category, what we realized was online. So we have already skipped that large format browsing experience, but online, which was the third step in that overall evolution anyways, was being picked up big time by almost all our consumers. Now the problem was, and I told you about that survey, that buyers were buying because of design. Now for every one such buyer, we had 30 consumers browsing our website and exhibiting the same behavior as buyers but not converting. We spoke to them, what is it that is stopping you? Number one reason, touch and feel. How can I buy something so expensive without touching and feeling it? We also realized that was our manifestation of that answer, but let me just go through the answers first. So number one reason, touch and feel. Number two reason, let's say 2-3 years down the line, if something goes wrong with the product, if the ring size changes, if a diamond chips off, if something happened, where do I go? How do I get it fixed? Number three, if few years down the line, I want to exchange it for a newer design, which is very common behavior in jewelry category, how do I do it? And it was right in front of us. The answer is very simple. We are actually sitting on a lot more demand than what we are converting right now, because we are forcing people to buy it online, which as a product brand we should not be doing. And they are already falling in love with the design. That's why they are browsing. In fact, in many of the cases, they would actually download the image, download the product, take it to their local jeweler and get it made and say, good, you should do that. I mean, it's my mistake that I'm not actually giving the offline experience. So I can't blame you for that. Right? So it was my responsibility to give them the omni-channel experience, because these were my own products. These were not being showroomed somewhere else. So with that thought process, we started omni-channel and we saw this behavior, this hypothesis playing out, that wherever we are opening, it's actually, the business is just booming. In a city, I'll just give you Lucknow as example. We are doing around 1.5 crore in our online only avatar annually in Lucknow. This year we are going to cross around 50 crore in revenue. So that's what omni-channel has done to the business, and I think it's relevant for a lot of similar categories.
When you get into this omni-channel experience, some of the things which you talked about, a 3 to 5 day turnaround rather than a 3 to 5 week, you would then need to carry inventory to some extent. How do you scale up a omni-channel business versus scaling up a online-only business? Is very different, right? And then again comes the question of access to capital, what you're doing around that. What were your experiences around really scaling it up? And of course, you had access to capital, but when you moved the format, how was the experience?
Right. So with that, the capital requirements, the nature of the business has also changed, right? So for as long as we were online only, capital required in the business was not that much. Whichever way I would plan my model, things like ROE, ROC, which I now know, I did not even know at that time. LTV CAC was enough for first 5-6 years. So then when we started moving offline, then we realized that there is something called ROC. And realize that we need different capital structures. Realize that, okay, this is now the consumer side of the business is kind of solved. We realized and we figured out and we did phenomenally well in figuring out that, okay, these should be the product, this should be the experience, this should be the consumer, this should be the brand positioning, etc. But the scale up now depends entirely on capital, on access to capital and access to right capital. We scaled, our initial scale has happened with our franchisee partners and we continue to be very bullish about that side. We are, along with equity, we are also looking at bank debts. There is a product called gold metal loan that banks have. So those are the kind of things that we are also looking at. But from here on, I agree, it's a lot more involved business. It's no longer as simple as just paying Google, get people on the website and just kind of selling and make money on them. In fact, jewelry business for the longest time had some basic tenets of banking business also. Right? Jeweler used to be Sahukar also. So I'm seeing a lot of those things. I'm also evolving. Like I said, I've not even done MBA. I'm just a engineer, so I had no idea about most of these metrics, most of these ratios, etc. I'm beginning to learn about a lot about balance sheet, about ratios and so on. And I have a great CFO, so I think that helped a lot.
So Gaurav, it's actually you're lucky that you didn't have to learn about RSC for 5-7 years. But coming back to, I think you touched upon a very important point that, when you're talking of startups, a large part of the focus is on continuous innovation, right? Whereas as you grow, you become exposed to higher levels of scrutiny, governance becomes a much bigger issue than just continuous innovation, and continuous innovation by itself is not, not the answer to everything. So how did you make this journey of balancing out innovation versus governance versus compliance, all of these pieces, and for the audience, what would be some of the learnings that you have which you can probably share?
Sure. So we in our case, what had happened was we grew very organically. So it's not that suddenly the whole world believed that jewelry commerce is the next Uber, and let's just start pumping in money in that. Right? So in a lot of industries, what had happened was that had happened, and in that case, a lot of entrepreneurs, rather than solving the core problems, they had to first scale to justify all that capital infusion, and then they have to fix the problems, right? So in this case, imagine, let's say I had opened 200 stores even before cracking out the right product experience, right, product designs, right, everything, and I would have been solving the same problems that I was solving at a much smaller scale. I would have been solving it at a much bigger scale. And then that much frustration, right, because when things are at scale, every month you're bleeding so much cash, every month you're actually missing your targets, etc. You're doing it at a much smaller scale, and you are kind of solving very localized problems. And once you have solved those, then you are moving to the next step. I think that, in my opinion, is the best way to grow. Sometimes you don't have a choice, because if someone else comes or some investor comes and dumps a whole shitload of money on your competitor, then you don't have this luxury of actually building it the right way, and you have no other choice but to also consume all that capital and then fix the business at scale. So in our case, I think this is the core thing which actually helped us make sure that whenever we saw a problem, be it in governance, be it in processes, so we had been running our own factory also. The factory scale was much smaller, but we knew it's gold and diamond, etc. We had to have processes, we had to have inventory checks, we had to have everything. So all the processes, etc. were already involved, or were reasonably evolved by the time we got to the scale stage. So when factory scaled from 200 pieces to 2000 pieces, the processes, etc. were already there, and most of those processes scaled, at least on the checks and governance side. Similarly, on the retail side also, we were kind of very cognizant of that, and we grew organically. It's not that in 1 year we grew 10 times, and then next year we were kind of flat or something like that. I think those curves actually are very problematic, and which is what we saw in last couple of years. I think around 2020 and 2021, when many of the entrepreneurs did not even have time to look at the problems, they were just scaling. And the capital was also scaling. So I think it was just a greed cycle, greed cycle of extreme degree, which led to a lot of these mishaps and a lot of these things that ideally should not have happened.
One of the questions which keep coming to our mind, and you probably refer to it as well, is that you can always look at your design and take it to a local jeweler and get it done, right? And then we have this entire made in India or made in Bharat versus made in China, conversations going at the parallel. What are some of your thoughts around this? That as you are saying that people are essentially buying it for the design, right? Then how do you compete in this kind of these two, competing plans, right? One is from the outside, the one is more local, the local jeweler type trying to, use your designs.
Right. So I'll first answer the local thing and then from outside. So on local jeweler sites, I think if a person actually loves our designs so much that she is browsing our designs, and she's browsing our designs, she's actually shortlisted from our designs, and then even if she actually makes it from her local jeweler, just because she does not trust us enough, I think that's fine. I would actually, I still like the fact that she is wearing our design. So, and that she loves our design, she loves the efforts that we put. Eventually, I think we'll solve for it and she'll come. As long as, so in that whole purchase journey, I think 80-90% of the time is spent with Bluestone. Eventually, she'll get comfortable with us. So I don't actually mind that behavior at all. We never tried to discourage, we never said, here a watermark, you can't download it, if you do, we'll come after you or anything of that sort. Yeah, we love it. Okay, so another thing is for the local jeweler, it generally, in our case what happens is we make multiple pieces of the same design. So first piece actually involves a lot higher cost. So the reason cannot be cost, because that person would be more expensive than I am, because I am making the 10th piece of it and the incremental cost is not that high. So if the cost of making first one is 5,000, incremental would be 500, let's say. That is the difference in the scale. So price pay, so that person cannot compete on price, so I think the only thing that person is competing is on the trust, which I think is fair. If someone does not trust me, that's perfectly fine. From outside, so unlike many of the categories, jewelry is a category where India is the market leader in manufacturing. So it's not that China had someone and you actually go to China and just, not like electronics, etc., that you get a lot of products, just list them and it will start selling. Secondly, I think in jewelry, unlike many other categories, jewelry is not a pull category, it's a push category. So difference being that, let's say books or mobile is a pull category. You go to Amazon, you say exactly what you want. So even if that Amazon has 100 million books, for you to get to the book that you want, it's just a one-step process. You search for it and you get to that, you go to that. Now, jewelry is not a pull category. If you want a ring, let's say one specific ring, you can't pull it out of the catalog. There's no name for it. There's no model number for it. Right? So it's a push category, or and hence I'm saying the quantity of designs don't matter. The quality of designs and the presentation of design matters a lot more than just the quantity. So even if you go to a website where it says 10 million rings, it doesn't matter if the first 2 pages are bad, you won't go to third page. Right? Because 10 million and let's say 10 product per page is 1 million pages. You are not going to go to 1 millionth page. So the quality of catalog, etc. is very important. Ours is a different category. And I think for a lot of lifestyle categories it matters. So rather than having 1 million designs or let's say 10 million designs with 1 million good designs, I would rather have 10,000 designs and all of them good, or 5,000 of them. So that ratio also matters a lot.
So, ladies and gentlemen, maybe a few questions from the audience for Gaurav. Shouldn't be just me asking him questions. And you also have the flexibility of asking him anything. I do have some restrictions. Any questions? Okay, I can see a hand at the end. Can we get a mic to him, please? Just at the end. Go ahead, please.
Hello. Hi, Gaurav. Thank you. Insightful. My name is Ankush, and me and my partner we're building a SaaS technology company, and we are into drug discovery. Drug discovery. Right. So we are actually facing a bit of a catch-22 because what we are trying to do is something which has not been done before in terms of being able to discover drugs in silico using computational biology.
Sorry, discovering drugs using?
In silico computational biology and artificial intelligence.
Okay, got it.
So the challenge we're facing is product market fit. That's one challenge. The other we're facing is while we're building the MVP, Uh, we of course need a good amount of fund to hire full stack developers and AI engineers to be able to build a commercial MVP. But at an idea stage, since it's quite a substantial idea, we are facing challenges in no investor wanting to put in money at this stage. So, how do you recommend we go about fundraising, given it's a very complex idea and the POC is still some time away?
Got it. So molecule discovery using AI. My brother works in Sanofi, in drug research only, right? So I believe, and he was in Novartis before this. So I think some of these things are being worked in big pharma also. Okay, I personally am a big fan of SaaS, but I believe SaaS works wonderfully where your users are many, right? So if your user base or your consumer is going to be very kind of a monopolistic kind of setup, and which I believe big pharma is, right? It's very difficult to break that stronghold that they have. The big pharmas, I mean, almost entire spend they do is on R&D. If something new, some new molecule comes up, if some new drug comes up, they actually take up that company, etc., etc. So it's kind of it. So on that, having a SaaS product which can only be so it cannot be consumed by, let's say, me. It cannot be consumed by. So if that SaaS product, the only customers for that SaaS product is going to be big pharma, then I believe that it's not. I mean, that is something that we should possibly look at. And SaaS, I think, works wonderfully. So let's say if you're building SaaS for developers, SaaS for retailers, SaaS for financial companies, or SaaS for HR, etc. A lot of these products, I think, SaaS is a open playground of opportunities. If you have the skill set, I think you should look at the right problem statement and work on it. And SaaS may just if you just keep on executing right, it will work.
So you're saying we should do free pilots for B2B organizations to start with?
I'm saying if your skill set is development, tech development, and let's say molecular or drug discovery is something that you just kind of applying it on, then you can apply the same skill set on many other problems also. And I'm saying maybe those other problems would yield better result or better outcome than just this. So I'm saying, see, for anyone who wants to build a SaaS company, what is your skill set? What is your strength? Your strength has been development, right? That you can actually development and product management. That you can actually look at a complex problem. You can see that okay, this is how hundred or millions of other people are struggling with the same problem. So let's say when Fresh Test does it, they know that okay, there are millions of organizations that need a way to efficiently manage their customer relations. Now, rather than 1 million companies spending on that on their own, if one company spends it and every company pays 1/10 of what they would have otherwise paid, or 1/100th of what they would have otherwise paid, that builds that business. In this case, if your clients are going to be 100 in the world, I'm saying that itself is a problem.
Thank you.
Thanks
You. In the interest of time, I'll have to bring the session to a close, but very insightful. Is there any other question? Okay, yeah. We'll take a question from you.
Hi Gaurav, thank you so much for this session. I'm a huge fan of Bluestone as well. So my question is that most of the founders and entrepreneurs that I've come across, they say that you find a passion and then you work on building on those grounds where your passion lies. But whereas in your story, the industry of jewelry is something that you stumbled upon, something that you had no knowledge or idea about, and then you started to build on that. So I just wanted to understand what values you had, what drove you to build Bluestone in the first place, and what exactly did you do to become like an industry expert for this?
See, so passion is definitely that is needed, because you'll go through several tough times when you're building a startup. So my passion has always been technology. I love coding, I still code, okay, whenever I get chance. So and in this business also, I think a lot of my, so everything is built by team, right? So I have a head of merchandise. He's a passionate professional in jewelry industry, and he takes care of, let's say, jewelry design part. And I have several other folks in the company. I think my passion personally has been in making sure, or rather, using technology to solve problems, which is what I've been doing for last 8 to 10 years in this industry also. At the same time, I also understand that there are things which would be out of my purview. So the company's strength should never be limited on founder strength. It should go beyond that, and that is the whole objective of getting team. So I get the right team in place, and I think any business that you're building, you will find that passionate, that niche that will keep you very, very passionate. But that is very important, right? So, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
So thank you. Thanks, Gaurav, for this insightful session. I think it was really wonderful to understand from you what drove you, the journey you had, some of the problems you faced. And I think the audience would have gathered a lot from this. Thanks for making time for us, and wish you a wonderful journey ahead.